Welcome to the Creative Voice Archive, a growing collection of conversations of the arts, where I talk about the ideas, the inspirations, and what it's like to be a creative today. My name's Tim Burgess, and welcome to the Creative Voice Archive. On this episode of Create the Voice Archive, I am joined by Bristol-based artist Jenny Brock, whose work moves between painting, poetry and landscape, exploring inner landscapes, memory and emotional experience. Jenny's paintings often sit in the space between the abstract and the personal, inviting viewers to bring their own interpretations. In this conversation, we talk about creativity, the process, and how art can reveal things about ourselves we didn't even realise were there. This is Jenny Brock, and this is the Creative Voice Archive. Hi Jenny, welcome to the Creative Voice Archive. I just wanted to start things off really and ask you, for anyone discovering your work, what would you hope for them to read into it?
Ooh, I would want it to be like a unique experience. So if they're looking at my paintings, for example, I like them to be, well, the aim for them is to be like quite semi-abstract, and for looking at them to be quite a unique personal experience, because they are ambiguous in nature. So I really like it when people look at a painting of mine and they see different things in them, even stuff that I haven't even thought about. I always find that really interesting to hear about, because for me personally, I don't really like it to be just handed on a spoon. I like it to be a bit more nuanced than that.
When did art stop being something you do then and start becoming something you needed?
Ooh, that's a good question. It was probably around the time that I figured out what my main inspiration is, because then it didn't just become about creating for academic purposes. It became about what I really find interesting in the art world. So that would have been sort of third year of uni when I realised, when I was doing my undergrad in fine art at Bath Spa, and it was when I was doing research for the dreaded dissertation, when I actually discovered in contextual terms what I am drawn to in art, which is the sublime. So then it became about me wanting to carry on exploring that, not for the purposes of grades or studio assignments, but actually just continuing to create stuff and get it out there.
When we talk about the sublime, I want to go into that a little bit more.
Cool.
Because it's also romanticism you use, and some come up in relation to your work quite a lot. What do those ideas mean to you personally?
Okay. Romanticism and the sublime, they are fairly old traditions in art. I think they came about in the 1800s. Artists like Caspar David Friedrich, Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog is a sort of classic example. And also, the painting that sparked it for me, this realisation that this is what I'm interested in, was his painting Monk by the Sea. And it's this big sort of landscape with, a distant horizon, and you're not really sure where you are, it's very ambiguous, it's very like interpretable, and there's this small figure of the monk by the water, and it's that encapsulates it really well. So it's about the sort of insignificance of people compared to the natural world. So it's like the sublime is basically about almost an element of awe and fear that come into it. So yeah, my work is a more modern example of that kind of idea. Oh, I wanted to mention as well, actually, that no, never mind. I did actually get to see that painting in person last year in Berlin. Wow. It was just a really luckily timed trip, and there was a Friedrich exhibition in Berlin, so I got to see that painting in real life. So that was a really cool full circle moment for me.
Let's talk about the process. You're very much process-led, aren't you? Yeah. I find. And how do you plan, and how much do you let the work reveal itself?
Well, the starting point for my paintings tends to be happy accidents to some degree, even though I hate that phrase, but I don't really know how else to describe it. It's
a bit Bob Ross.
yeah, happy little accidents. But yeah, it's about almost removing my hand for the first bit of it, because I find, and I used to find, that when I didn't do that, I became too bogged down in the details immediately. So I actually find it much easier and a more enjoyable process to start with something that you can't quite predict and is completely unique. So, for example, I do a lot of acrylic pouring as a starting point. I don't tend to leave it just as that. I always add stuff. But yeah, there's always an element of like chance and then working with that. And I try not to overwork pieces. Yeah. Because that is easily done. I try not to.
But at what point do you find you need to stop? Is there you have to sit back for a day or so? Or?
I tend to do a lot of waiting and looking as the first layer is drying. Because with acrylic pouring, for example, you actually have to leave it for a few days for it to dry, and its appearance will probably shift slightly in that time as well. So you're not actually left with what you're going to work with until a few days later, which again is part of the process, and it's part of like the surprise. But then I basically think about what lends itself to this piece. So like I might rotate it and look at it from different angles. I might just start kind of almost trying not to look at it too much, and then you know, having a look a little while later and seeing what works.
Okay. Do they ever change though? When you think, oh, that'll work, and then halfway through you go, actually.
Yeah, sometimes. The really great thing about acrylics is they are very versatile. So, like if I've just painted something and it doesn't quite work, I can literally just rub it with a bit of water and it will come off. But the acrylic pouring, because it has extra ingredients to it, it's a very sturdy layer of paint, so that's not really affected. So the stuff that I put on top, I can edit actually.
Have you ever had any pours that you can actually work out what it needs?
Oh yeah. There have been like a fair few that I've just kind of given up on, but that's fine. It's part of the process. Yeah. And you know, as well, this was something I delved into last week during my master's boot camp. But I used to say, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but now I would say I have a habit of describing myself as a bit of a perfectionist. But actually what it's all about is working out what is satisfying to me in the moment, which is a constantly changing thing. So, you know, sometimes I will have a painting or a background that has worked out okay at the time, and then actually I just can't figure out what to do with it, and it ends up sitting around for a couple of years, and then I end up reusing it, which is fine, you know. But sometimes I will leave a background sitting around, and then I will suddenly be inspired, you know, a while later, and then I will actually be able to use it, which is, you know, really satisfying.
Your paintings feel very ambiguous in a way. Is that important to you?
Yeah, very. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I don't particularly like it when artwork is just like spoon-fed to you. I like it when it's a unique experience in as much as it can be, because otherwise, to be frank, I think, well, I could just take a photograph.
Yeah.
But when there's a bit more of a process to it, and you're actually creating something by hand, yeah, I like it when it's a bit of a unique experience and people see different things in it.
Yeah.
I just really like hearing about what people see and what it reminds them of.
It's their becomes their personal story, or their personal feeling.
Yeah.
It gives.
And then I think it means more that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Looking back at your work though, you know, you've been going maybe 10 years now, isn't it? Nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel's changed the most?
Okay. Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, it'll be coming up for 10 years since I graduated. It'll be 10 years next year. What's changed? You mean like with process or personally?
Personally and process.
Okay. A lot's changed personally. My goodness.
Is that reflected within your art?
I think so. I think it's impossible for it not to be. I think whatever you create automatically reflects your life.
It's your influences at that time, isn't it?
Yeah. You're constantly inspired by everything that you're absorbing, and I think even if you're not consciously trying to reveal that, I think it will be to some degree. You know, I mean, I'm living in a different city. Pretty much everybody I know in my life, I have met since then. You know, friends, chosen family, like, you know, pretty much everybody. And like very recently, my mum unexpectedly passed away in November. So that's been, you know, a heck of a change. I'm living alone for the first time in my life. But something that I've realised is that I think my work actually reflected a lot of anticipatory grief, and like anticipatory isolation. I'm not an isolated person, but I think there's a deep sense of having to fend for myself, which has always come across in my work. I didn't even realise that until a friend, and I think maybe actually a couple of people separately, said, oh yeah, your work is about like isolation and loneliness. And I was like, huh. So then it was almost a case of my work revealing stuff to me about myself, because you can think, oh, I really like painting this sort of thing, but you don't necessarily know why. And then it's only when somebody else reflects that back at you that you're like, oh yeah. and then, oh no, I need help.
Do you ever get upset about that though? I mean, like, if you felt that, no, that's not exactly what I'm trying to bring across here, and someone's read it different.
No,
there is quite a kind of a selfish kind of thing to. I mean, there is times I think when an artist paints a picture and you actually meant it to be, and it's read completely the opposite than what you're trying to portray. Have you ever had that?
I imagine that has happened, but annoyingly nothing springs to mind. I think it's because I do genuinely like it when people interpret things. At first when someone said that they read my work as about loneliness and isolation, I was a bit like, oh really? But then it made complete sense.
So you learned to let go, and
Yeah.
then at that point you
Yeah.
learned to let go
Yeah.
and give the thought to the viewer rather than for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a massive part of being a creative in any sense. The creation of the work is only part of it. Actually, the vast majority of it is letting it live in the world and be absorbed and interpreted by other people. So if you can't handle that side of things, it's probably quite difficult. Yeah.
You mentioned with your mum, and we know, or I know if other people don't, that you and your mum wrote a book together. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It's an anthology of stories and rhymes, and it's basically a family-friendly children's
People
book.
may not know you know to bring this in for the viewers, that you're also a poet, a writer as well. So painting is your main process. So we're talking now about your poetry side, but I think you've done some of the illustrations as well. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's I confuse myself with my art practice because it is multifaceted, and I think that can sometimes be quite confusing and you feel yourself pulled in different directions. Again, that was something that I worked through a lot last week on this boot camp. But yeah, painting is my main endeavour. I really like creating commissions for people as well. That's my kind of main consistent goal at this point. But yes, my book that I wrote with my mum, obviously it's very bittersweet at this point, but I really want to try and get it out in the world more. Partly for her, obviously, her memory and getting her voice out there, but obviously also, for me, as doing a decent amount of the writing and also illustrating it. It's very different to my painting practice.
Yeah.
It's the illustrations are basically funny cartoons, a lot of animals, a lot of like visual gags.
Well, these were done pre-university, wasn't they? The illustrations or drawing.
They were actually done mostly post-university, but closer to it. So I graduated in 2017. By that point, I think most of the book was actually complete. It just took a long time to actually get it finished and get it created. Life. But yeah, most of the illustrations I think were done post-university, and it was part of the just getting it finished, basically.
So this book started then, I understand, from yourself being a really young age with the poems.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of an emotional story, I guess, attached to it with your mum, because as you passed in last November, it's I suppose you can relate to it more so because when these particular poem was created together, or the stories were created together.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of can only allow myself to think about in small chunks at the moment. But it's I mean, she started coming up with the ideas for it when I was at the upper end of primary school.
Wow.
So that's how long it's been being created for.
Sometimes when things rush like that, there becomes something really powerful. And I found it to be like you can pick it up and put it back down like a coffee table book, which is quite cool, really nice.
Yeah,
you can read it to the children or quite small, happily to yourself with it.
Yeah. It's one of those books that, because it's an anthology, you can dip in and out of it. It's a combination of stories, poems, and then at the end of it there is a longer story, sort of like the main story. But yeah, it's a real variety. There's a lot in it, a lot of. I mean, as you can imagine,
there's a lot of work. Yeah.
From me being aged like 9 to age, it's been a while. So yeah, there's a lot in it.
Do you think your poetry now though talks to your artwork and vice versa?
Yeah. The poetry that I write, it's that typical thing where I tend to write poetry when I'm not feeling great. It's
therapy poetry.
Yeah. I tend to. It's quite intuitive. I tend to wait until a poem kind of pops into my head to some extent. It's not something that I force. I try not to force any of my creative endeavours, but obviously that's easier said than done, because sometimes you do just need to practice and you do need to just create something. But yeah, my poetry, my sort of serious poetry, if you like, also has themes of loneliness and isolation and working through almost semi-imagined, semi-real situations. It's hard to explain. But there's definitely a lot of, psychological elements to it. I've started attending a few open mic nights and things. The last one I went to, I did actually read a couple of poems from the book, so that was very light-hearted and, fun, because that was the theme of the night. It was a comedy night. But I have started reading some of my more serious poems, or cerebral poems, if you like, to people at open mic nights.
How did the feedback go?
Really well, really positive.
Yeah, and how was your nerves?
Honestly, not too bad, because I did a lot of going up on stage at school and stuff.
There's still that soul bearing though with your poetry. Is quite a scary, probably quite a scary thing for the feedback, really. So it was all positive. Anything that stuck to mind?
I have to think. I mean, the most recent one. Oh, actually, yeah, there was a really lovely thing. This was last year. Oh, yeah, the very first open mic night I did, actually, was at Tonic's Winter Warmer. Tonic was an open mic night that my friend Chris Beale ran for quite a while. And the headliner were Stone Jet, the band. They're amazing, amazing vocals. And afterwards, the lead singer was very complimentary about my poem. He was like, "Yeah, I can see what you're doing there." And then I went to a gig of theirs, a couple of years later, fairly recently, and he remembered me from that night. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" I did not expect to be remembered at all.
Must have been that good then.
I don't know, but he remembered me. Either that, or he's got just a really good memory. But yeah, that was really, really wonderful. It's quite arresting in a good way to be actually remembered, and I had another amazing experience recently, actually, where A couple of weeks ago, I had my very first introductory session for my master's degree, and as soon as has that done a thing? It's fine. I can start that anecdote again. Okay. Yeah, I had another amazing experience recently, actually, where I had my very first session for my master's degree at the Make Happen Institute, and I went along in person. And as soon as I walked into the room, one of my course mates was like, "Are you Jenny?" I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh, just before COVID hit, I bought 4 of your paintings from,
wow.
this gallery." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Firstly, wow and thank you. Secondly, that's really like strange in a good way to actually be like recognised as well.
You have to pinch yourself every now and then.
Yeah. It almost
Yeah.
feels like it's happening to someone standing next to me, not actually me. There's certainly a very surreal element to it. But also, I always wanted to know who had bought those paintings, because I think it's the only time in my life so far that a complete stranger has bought work and I haven't got to meet them and say hi. So it was really great to be able to actually meet the person and say thank you and put a face to a name, kind of thing.
I think that's because you're saying about, it's nice, for a stranger, but I think, you're still selling works. It's because they know you, I think, and then once they know you, they understand the work. Maybe I think that's a thing to think about, because you're very, as you said, you're very extroverted normally anyway, but your work's inverted. So,
that's a weird one. I wouldn't put a polarity on whether I'm extroverted or introverted.
You sit
honestly,
on the fence at the time.
Yeah, I think everybody exists on a spectrum with that, but like, yeah, I'm only extroverted in certain situations, but also it takes practice. I mean, I'm definitely more confident and chatty than I used to be.
Yeah.
But it still has to be certain situations.
Is that down to confidence, do you think, at the time, or is it a practice of putting your mask on, effectively?
I think it's a combination. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone now? So if you were like just finishing uni, and been 10 years, what advice would you give to someone that's trying to follow a certain path?
I would say, just in general, no matter what your creative pursuit is, make sure that you're doing it for yourself first and foremost, because if that's not the main thing, then you will just end up exhausted and not wanting to do it anymore. But there is also a balance with that, where you tend to find the most satisfaction when there is an element of doing stuff for other people. With creativity, there's nearly always an element of doing it for other people, but only if you put it out there. But it's something to bear in mind, like that balance of making sure that it's something that you genuinely enjoy and you like looking at, listening to, the process. It's really good if it's something where you enter a flow state while creating it, because that's a good sign. But yeah, if it's a completely insular process, try and work out ways of getting it out into the world to some extent, because that's where the greatest satisfaction comes from, is when it ends up reflected at you in some way.
Thank you. I think that's going to be quite valuable. So, getting on to the last question. and I've asked this to all the artists and creatives across the field.
Okay.
Your state of mind now. So, if you can think where your path is going, because obviously you're on your masters now in Sweden, and so if you can picture yourself now in where you want to be in 5 years, what advice would you give to yourself now?
I always find these questions really hard, about this sort of where do you see yourself, because I'm sort of like, I don't know. That's the nature of life. But I like the fact that it's about what would I tell myself now, because I tend to be quite good at advising other people, but not so good at listening to my own advice. But I like to think I'm getting a little bit better at it, which is just try not to worry so much, because the future doesn't exist yet. It's made up of things that we do in the moment. The only thing that exists right now is this moment. That's the only thing. And in this moment, everything's fine. That was another bit of wisdom that our boot camp last week really went into, and it was very valuable, because there's a Rush lyric that I really like called that says the future disappears into memory with only a moment between. So it's like
just added a few years on me with Rush.
It's very it's one of the great ironies of life that you can never exist in this moment with the appreciation that you might have for it in a little while, no matter whether that's a few minutes or a few years or whatever. Like, you can never observe the moment, well, unless you're very well practiced in it, I guess. You can never really observe the present moment with that kind of appreciation that you will have for it, like almost like being nostalgic in the moment. So I think it's really good to appreciate everything that is okay now and try not to worry, because, yeah, as I said, the future doesn't exist yet.
How is that working on your own advice at the moment then? Because you say that you try and give it, is it you're leaning towards more of that advice now?
I certainly try to. I mean, since my mum last November, I've been a lot more emotional than I've been in a long time. But I think that's a good thing, to be honest. I think before last November, I was very I was holding a lot of things down, and I was experiencing a lot of anxiety and, as I said, a lot of anticipatory grief, even though I didn't know it was going to happen when it did, but I knew that it would happen at some point. So I was very, unfortunately, a lot of it came out in like irritability and feeling just really lost. But now I don't feel that in the same way, of course, but that's been replaced by this, obviously this loss, this, it's very scary knowing that, she's gone tangibly, and that's, very, very hard. There's a quote that one of my friends shared with me, and it's actually a Doctor Who quote apparently, and it says, "The day that someone dies is not the hardest day, because you have lots of things that you have to do. It's all of the days that they stay dead. That's the hardest thing." And it's very true.
Yeah. I came across a quote the other day, and it was by Jimmy Carr, and he said, I think he quoted from somebody else, but this is where I got it from. Us as humans, we kind of die twice, you know. There's the physical death, and then there's the death of the name.
Yeah.
So the idea is to keep someone alive is to keep them, the name, and mentioning them all the time.
Yeah.
I'm very comforted by that.
Mm-hmm.
And the memories that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, her name was Christine, and she was a truly unique and wonderful person.
And so are you, Jenny. Tip off the old
Thanks,
box.
Tim. So are you.
Thank you, Jenny, for that lovely conversation. Very open of you. I appreciate that. And I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have. Thank you so much for having me on these interviews. And you're a very good facilitator, and it's a very just natural conversation. And pleasure.
Lovely.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much.